Hey guys, Peter here to do an album review. Today I'm here to tell you about the lyrics from Nattkrönt, Hädanfärd, out July 9th on Noble Demon. This album has 9 tracks, 45 minutes in length, and this is the band's second full-length studio album. They are a Swedish melodic black death metal band. Now, this album is really well constructed, both from a structural perspective, but also from a soundscape approach. It feels very balanced, but at the same time, very diverse. What I mean by that is that it's not a record that becomes repetitive, that starts to become mundane as you progress through it. That you can almost feel exactly what's coming next because all the songs start to feel alike, start to have a lot of the same mechanisms, start to have a lot of the same structures. I felt that it was balanced in terms of the execution, it was balanced in terms of the quality, and it was also balanced in terms of the atmosphere that really glues it together. But as far as the tracks are concerned, there's a lot of diversity on this album. The songs have the same elements, but they're mingled together, they're put together in a different formula, in a different format that really allows each song to have its own DNA, to have its own fingerprint. So it's an interesting way of creating an album that gives you 9 different pieces of the puzzle, but when you get to the end of it, you're able to see the picture perfectly clear. Once you get into the soundscape, this is an album that has great sonic drive. It just really penetrates. It doesn't feel chunky, it doesn't feel clunky. Even when the songs get heavy, you'd always feel like this is a very smooth record as far as the essence of its sound and how it's perceived by you, the listener. It has depth, it has a lot of layers to it, but the layers are not muddied with one another. They're really well defined, so it's easy for you as a listener to break down all the different elements that create the soundscape and understand exactly what each one of them it's doing, and then see the bigger picture when you bring them all together within the tracks. This is definitely a step up from their previous record where I felt like perhaps things were a little bit more muddy, things were not as clear. On this album, there's definitely a goal, there's definitely a roadmap, and they stick to it and they stayed with it all the way through, never really deviating from that path from the beginning all the way to the bottom. Within this soundscape, there are 3 cornerstones: the orchestration, the drums, and the guitars. The orchestrations on this album are phenomenal. That's what drives the majority of the atmosphere. The layers are incredible. They use them throughout this whole record in different times within different pieces of the songs in order to do different things, but always pushing that atmospheric element to the forefront. Sometimes becoming the song, or becoming such a big part of the song that they take center stage, but most of the times becoming just a layer, just a piece of the pie, and not necessarily having that predominant role, but having still a very important role in how you perceive the overall soundscape and atmosphere that the track has to offer. Then you have the drums, very thunderous from the beginning all the way to the end. I always felt like they grounded the record, they propelled the record, they propelled you within the tracks and from track to track, and they're definitely the motor of this album. They have a lot of heaviness, and they give a lot of heaviness to the overall soundscape, which is an important element because on the other side you have the guitars, the counterbalance to that heaviness. A little bit more driven, a little bit more direct, at times a little bit more eclectic, but always providing melody, always providing a bright spot, that light at the end of the tunnel. And the tunnel is really the sound of the drums that encompasses those guitars. So this is a really important dynamic, a dynamic that gave you different feels, different looks from song to song, but stayed true as far as that design is concerned from top to bottom. So it's a lot of consistency, and this is why the album feels balanced while still being very diverse at the same time. On top of it all, you have the vocals, perhaps the most consistent element of this album, even though there are some nuances, there are some clean vocals here and there are some few changes throughout the record, changes that were needed in order to really change your perception, change your eyesight, but better yet, to really serve the songs better, in order to create a much better track, in order to bring the lyrics to life, in order to bring the song to life, so it doesn't feel like you're going to get the same output track in and track out. Still very consistent, but those nuances are just enough throughout the album to really perk your ears, to really reset your attention and re-engage you with the album, with the songs. Overall, this is definitely a step up, perhaps more than just a step up. It's a leap forward for the band from their debut record to now. It definitely feels more mature, better designed, better executed. It has more of a purpose. It's not as chaotic. I didn't feel like they were throwing things at the wall just to see what would stick. This is an album that just feels that it had more of an intent and a roadmap to it in terms of how it was built, how it was delivered, and what they wanted out of it. It was not just about creating the best songs possible. It was creating the best songs possible that really fit in the context of the record itself. Now, as far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Tenebrae. The drums are thunderous on this track. The orchestration brings a lot of darkness in terms of the atmosphere that it provides, and the guitars really guide the experience. The vocals also add to that heaviness, so you have this counterbalance between vocals and drums, the guitars and orchestration. One is pulling in one direction, the other two are pulling in the other. So that's kind of the dynamic of the song. It really mixes these two worlds. You see two sides of the same coin, giving sometimes a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde feel, but the transitions between Jekyll and Hyde are absolutely perfect. Smooth transitions that make the song feel continuous and not necessarily clunky and broken from one to the next. Next you have Gudars, Skymning, a more direct start of this song vocally and musically. I felt like they were more to the point, at least as the song starts. It feels heavier at times, still melodic, still really well balanced. The ebbs and flows exist within the song in order to give you this up and down feel, in order to change your perception of the track so that the song doesn't feel repetitive at all. You always feel like you're moving, almost like you're moving through the ocean, if you will. That's kind of the essence that this track really puts forward. At the middle of the track, there's a little bit of a reset, a reprieve, if you will. You feel like you can go up for air, but it's going to be just for a short period of time, and that's exactly what happens. And then from there you get into the solo section that just really brings a lot of light to a song that felt slightly dark up until that point. At the end, you feel like the track starts to move towards the beginning, so it goes almost full circle. But it's a song that just has this sense of moving with the ocean, moving with the tide, with the current, with the waves. That's the ebbs and flows that they created with sound and vocals, with the parameters that they had at their disposal. Last but not least, Enslingen. This is the closing track. Brutal opening. This song really starts off in your face, very aggressive, very intense, very heavy from the get-go. It allows the light to come in ever so often, so there's some bright spots throughout this song, and it feels like it's trying to blend that brightness of the track with the more heavy, dark approach that the track has. The vocals feel more linear, so they allow that to be the constant line that this song has, while sonically it's moving ever so slightly beneath it and above it. That's kind of the style that I felt. The orchestrations really help give depth to this song. They impact the atmosphere, they impact the track, they impact the sonic perspective that you have. But I really felt that the depth, they made the song feel bigger, wider, have a much larger bass. You just feel like there's more for you to process. So perhaps a song that's constructed in a more linear, simpler approach, by adding the orchestrations and the manner in which they did, really made the song feel slightly more complex and slightly more engaging and interesting. A nice way to finish off the record, because it's a track that really brings together a lot of the elements that we saw from the beginning all the way to the end of this record. This is it. This is Nattkrönt with Hädanfärd, out July 9th on Noble Demon. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.